actual government, instead of the government that you have, which is mostly populated by individuals at this point in your history that don't really have any understanding or knowledge of the existence that the clandestine individuals and organizations do who are aware of our existence. Do you understand that that makes sense to you?
Yes.
All right.
Good. Can you provide us with some insight to the occurrence at Skinwalker Ranch in Utah? There's evidence that seems to be significant that there were some sort of strange occurrences there. And
yes.
Is that a possible first location for open contact?
It is possible. It is a very powerful portal, interdimensional portal on your planet, one of several, that allows for the coming and going of different extra-dimensional beings of different types. So you are beginning to realize and discover and map out, in a sense, that particular portal as existing because it has a very strong manifestations that are very apparent. So it's the beginning of you really knowing, really seeing, really investigating scientifically the existence of some of the interdimensional portals on your planet.
Which comes back to what you were talking about with resonance, that if you're in a particular location, then that can help prime you to a resonance with another being, or I guess an ET being associated with that vortex?
Yes. It's a very powerful vortex that, shall we say, taps into extraterrestrial dimensions, extra-dimensional beings, parallel realities, and a variety of other things we will not go into at this time. It's a very important vortex in that sense that it is so, shall we simply say, multinational, to use a loose term. Multiphasic would be more accurate.
And along those lines, Sedona, and in particular Bell Rock, that location would provide resonance opportunities for what?
Some similar things, but again, it's mostly geared to the idea of magnification and amplification of the vibrational energies you bring into that vortex in order to have more deep self-investigations of what beliefs you are holding on to as true. So in a sense, it's good practice in Sedona as a vortex to learn how to align with different vortex energies, interdimensional energies, before going into some vortex like Skinwalker Ranch, which is much more powerfully aligned to actually show you a reflection of what you're bringing in with you in an uncompromising way, without the allowance of being able to shift.
And locations like, say, Machu Picchu, where there seems to be a lot of extraterrestrial activity.
Yes, well, again, there are these dimensional vortices all around your planet where it is easier for traffic to come and go, so to speak.
So the ones that would be, let's say, particularly lined with nature energy, would they may also be ET kind of related?
In some cases, some of them are a little bit more heavily weighted in terms of nature or elemental beings. But yes, all of them can be used depending on the nature of the extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional energy to make connections to those beings. But different vortices are weighted in different ways that makes it easier for you to make a resonant connection to different things. Sometimes more than the idea of an extraterrestrial connection, because it's more relevant for you to connect to an elemental or some other nature spirit.
So on the nature side, and particularly for those that are interested in Willa and her timing, what are some locations that would be heavily weighted in the nature direction that would be complementary to Willa's reality?
The idea of some of the crop circles in Glastonbury, and also, of course, many locations in Ireland. With regard to your United States, it's more about the idea of Shasta.
And redwoods?
Yes, of course. Any nature location, any forest will have some vortices that are connected to the idea of the elementals. But you are asking for the more prominent ones.
Right, right. And another person was sharing with me that they had an experience in Alaska, in a very, very remote part of Alaska, where they were interacting with, I guess, Sitka pine, or that the forest was so magical in that particular.
There are many vortices also in Alaska, and one thing that can be said is in many places upon your planet, whenever there is a city that is a prominent city, it's mostly because either intuitively or unconsciously, people have gravitated to a vortex in order to create that city, and that's one of the reasons why they settle in that place. But in terms of a natural vortex, a natural spot in Alaska, you will find that the Denali forest is one of the most powerful.
Wow, okay. And also a question came up about the concept of, with resonance, you can obviously talk with beings, interdimensional, etc. But also on the idea of plants and even microscopic things like viruses, that you can communicate with those beings also. And so this leads to the question of regarding COVID and individuals who have talked about having contact with the virus itself, the consciousness of the virus.
Yes.
And in both cases, even though one had a frightening experience and the other one had a more loving experience, the end result was when they woke up in the morning, they no longer were ill.
Yes. Again, this can be done in many different ways, and especially some of the plant teachers on your planet can avail your consciousness to communicate with life forms such as that.
Can you explain a little more about why one person would have a negative and one would have a positive, but the outcome was still the same?
It's either what they needed to experience or what they brought in with them in terms of their belief system unconsciously.
And the difference between people who receive messages like that and the vast majority of people who don't seem to have any kind of experience like that?
Well, there are many different reasons. But in general, most people are simply not in tune to those kinds of things or don't believe that such experiences can happen. And they simply operate more out of fear.
Okay. And like the major shifts that we've gone through as a planet due to this particular situation, is that level of nature talking to us about what we need to change or helping us become aware of what we need to change?
Yes, exactly so. If you look at it that way, if you understand the overall message that there are consequences to the choices that you make. So choose wisely.
Perhaps we feel like we've accomplished sort of dominance over science in a sense, or many of the things that in our earlier periods of history we were not able to cope with, like pandemics and things like that. So maybe our listening is different now because we've achieved a sense of competence in dealing with these things.
Well, when you say we, again, remember, not everyone perceives things the same way. So let me make a statement, a comment. One of the things that would be perhaps advantageous for your species is to understand in your ancient, shall we say, for now, as an example, in your ancient biblical terms, when you read that humanity was given dominion over the earth, you have mistranslated the word dominion. What you were assigned to be is caretakers. So dominion over the animals and the plants and so on and so forth does not mean that you control as you wish, as you will. It means that you take care of it, that you are the tenders of the garden, you are the caretakers. That is what having dominion on the earth means, that you are in harmony as nature and a caretaker of the world. So absorb that, and many things will become much clearer as to why things are happening the way they are happening.
Right. And that seems to interact with the idea of scarcity of resources, that there's so much competition amongst the human beings for what they consider scarce resources.
It is only a belief system that makes things appear scarce.
So that goes hand in hand with changing our relationship with the planet.
Yes, and changing the relationship with yourself.
So one person here was asking, can things like emotions and negative beliefs be passed down through epigenetics or epigenetics? If so, is there a way to clear the hereditary negative beliefs that your conscious mind is unaware of?
It's not that they are literally passed down, but the genetics can create a predisposition based on the theme you've chosen to explore to absorb the idea of fear-based beliefs from those around you, such as your parents or your society or your schooling or your friends. They don't absolutely determine that you have inherited it, but you may have inherited the predisposition to absorb those things. And therefore, it still comes down to what you choose to believe by self-investigation and knowing that you are completely empowered to decide what is true for you.
So when an individual is in the womb and they're experiencing the environment as being whatever their mother is experiencing,
yes,
what kinds of things are they absorbing during, let's say, the last 3 months of the pregnancy?
Whatever is more relevant to the theme that they chose to explore by having chosen that individual to be born to. Remember, that's a choice too. And if they have a certain theme they would like to explore, they're going to choose an individual that's going to give them at least the possibility of predisposing them to absorbing certain things that will help them on their journey, either to change them, to overcome them, or to live with them. There's no accidents in that.
So a child that would be born to someone, let's say, that's bipolar, where they experience their rage and they also experience the loving side, I suppose.
Case-by-case basis, that's all we will say on this subject. Take it as a case-by-case basis. There are as many reasons for children and spirits to choose individuals like that. I cannot give you one generalization that works for all.
Okay, so you've also spoken of our planet as being a living entity. In recent years, we've seen what is, from our perspective, extreme climate and disease events. Can it be said that we are witnessing Earth's autoimmune system countering the human infection, and that is endangering its well-being? So, as you once told us, your people's name for our planet is
Ananika.
That was the other thing I wanted to know, the Ananika, yes.
I wouldn't necessarily think of yourself as an infection. That doesn't serve you, really. And the idea is that the Earth can get along fine without you. But the idea is that you are creating one atmosphere, one biosphere, one idea here in conjunction with the Earth as expressions of nature from the Earth. So the idea of what you reflectively see as the Earth's illness is your illness of belief systems. So the idea is for you to see those reflections as a way to guide you back into balance and back into harmony within yourselves. In the unlikely, shall we say, event that you exterminate yourselves, become extinct, the Earth will move on without you. But the Earth and you have made, in a sense, a higher agreement to have a certain experience that allows you the opportunity to reach a higher plane of existence in harmony, to play out certain stories in a more positive way. It's up to you to use it that way, but what the Earth is doing is reflecting the imbalance within humanity. It's not that the Earth itself is diseased. It's acting as a reflective guidance for you to bring yourself back into balance.
So those that chose to be here on Earth in a situation where most of our recorded history, there are some kinds of wars going on somewhere. So one could say humans appear to be very warlike beings. So choosing to incarnate in this kind of a reality with that level of extreme behavior means that the soul has decided to go on this adventure of transformation.
That's one way to look at it. Again, don't generalize.
Right. So, but it is a master class in that respect because of the level of challenge.
It is a master class in transformation. That doesn't mean everyone will graduate.
And is global warming a real thing? Does the recent extreme weather come as a result of human activities, or is it the result of Earth's magnetic field shift?
It is a natural cycle that has been exacerbated by human activity technologically. However, as many people on your planet have realized, it's a little bit more accurate to simply say climate shift or climate change. Some parts of your planet will become warmer. Some parts will become colder. Some parts will become wetter, as I think many of you are now discovering with all of your flooding. So the idea is go for the idea of climate shift or climate change rather than just global warming, which only addresses certain parts of your planet. It is a natural cycle, but it wouldn't be happening now in the way that it's happening at such an accelerated pace if humanity hadn't accelerated it with the technological pollution that you are now putting into the biosphere.
Okay. And as a quasi-physical being, what would your atoms look like under a microscope? Would they appear ghostly or solid? Do you pass through liquids such as water without feeling it, or is there a certain part of the H2O molecule that you can sense? And could you transfuse your quasi-physical atoms into a physical being?
Yes, the atoms would appear somewhat ghostly to you. We can pass through solids and liquids, but the idea is that we can also resonate to interact with whatever portion of them serves us. So it depends upon what frequency we choose and the theme of exploration of what material we are interacting with that determines how we interact with it or whether we interact with it at all. It depends upon the type of physical being in terms of the idea of sharing our particular atomic structure with them. In a way, for most of you on your planet, for us to introduce the idea of the quasi-physical particles into your physical material body would probably create a sensation or an experience similar to what you call spontaneous combustion.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
It can be.
That's like the ultimate hot foot, huh?
Yes. Or the ultimate hot seat.
How did the Greys choose the human subjects to create hybrids? And was it merely a genetic component they were looking for in people with certain life experiences, or was there some other alternative ideas?
It is that to some degree, looking for certain genetic markers, but in many cases, the Greys are choosing those in a parallel reality that are representative of the family lines in their parallel reality.
And do any of the 5 hybrid races have all black artificial lenses directly on their eyes to protect them from certain environments?
Yes, the Greys do, and the tall Greys can, the Mazzani, sometimes use that technology.
So our version of Greys with big black eyes may actually be like they're wearing sunglasses?
Yes. And it's not just sunglasses. They are a technology that affords them information as well, much in the same way that some of your heads-up displays do.
Cool. And can you expand on how our familiar symbols and archetypal representations might be used as a third reality for ETs to communicate with us through?
That is a subject we will cover at another time.
Okay. And were there certain genetic aspects that the Greys were looking for when they chose certain humans, or is it more of that people volunteered because they wanted to transform and they wanted to participate?
Both.
What would be some of the attributes, though, that a new human?
Not at this time.
Okay. If your civilization lives without resistance, why do you experience death at all? Since death, in a sense, is a release of resistances accumulated throughout our lives. And once your civilization shifts into fifth density for good, and thus into total non-physicality, does that mean that you no longer experience death?
Why do you go swimming and then come out? The idea is not always about resistance in the way that you mean it. The idea is to have an experience and then absorb that experience into your greater self. You go swimming, you come out of the pool or the ocean to go on with life in a different way, to experience the land instead of the water. So we experience physical reality and then go into non-physical reality for a variety of reasons, just as you do. It's an experience to be had. It has nothing to do with the idea of just giving up resistances. That's an extremely limited way to look at the idea of life and death.
Okay, and like if you look at planet Earth, the things that people are passionate about or have experienced as being really fun seem to go through a lot of borders, you know, and
did you say borders?
Common. Well, the idea that we have many common things, like there's a lot of competitions humans seem to enjoy. There's sports, there's all kinds of ways that humans entertain themselves, plays, acting. So
yes.
When in your civilization, being at such a high frequency, what are some of the things that really give beings joy?
What I'm doing gives me absolute joy, or I wouldn't be doing it. So there are many things. People that relate to the idea of nature in different ways, people that relate to the idea of games in different ways, people that relate to the idea of communication with other beings and spirits in different ways, people that relate to the idea of communing with animals in different ways, many different kinds of things. There's a wide variety of experiences and passions on my own world as there is on yours. It's just that many of them take place on different levels in different ways and are expressed differently.
And it's interesting because there's a lot of similarities in terms of the things we enjoy and the way we express them. And then that would be something you would also express, but just in a more expanded way.
Perhaps, not always. Sometimes we get joy out of doing something in what you would consider to be a relatively normal way.
Okay.
Depends on the purpose for experiencing it. Just as, in my training as a first contact specialist, I did have to go through a period of learning about the idea of languages as you use them, to understand the form of communication. That was a joyful experience, even though we don't, in and of ourselves, use our ancient language much anymore. So we chose to have those particular experiential limitations in order to understand the joy of the experience of having different languages, so we could relate to the idea of communicating with civilizations such as yours that use different languages.
Can you fly without any kind of mechanical assistance?
I can levitate. I can teleport. It's not flying in the sense of something like what you would call Superman.
The kinds of things that humans actually dream about and then think, oh, I really wish I could do that here on Earth.
Yes, and eventually you may be able to. Eventually. That is your way of expressing the idea of motion. We have a different way of expressing the idea of motion.
Speaking of levitation, there's a game that children play at summer camp where someone lays down and then everyone puts like one finger on each hand underneath the person, and then they simultaneously are able to raise the person up.
Yes.
What is the mechanism? What's happening there?
There are several things at play. One, the power of belief, making a game out of it to make it easier to do. Two, there's a lot you don't understand about physical leverage that you need to explore. Three, the idea of actually allowing an individual to not weigh as much by making shifts in the gravitational component in a limited space. There are many things going on.
That is very magical, but it also sort of demonstrates the idea that we give ourselves opportunities to experience alternate realities as children. So we know that physical reality is not as fixed as it appears to be.
Yes. So this is why making a game out of things, as children do, can actually be the most important thing you could do to understand certain principles about how you manifest physical reality.
I've heard there is a wave of consciousness which permeates the cosmos, and living creatures are made sentient by contact with it. Does such a wave exist? And if so, what can you tell us about it?
You're simply talking about all that is and the way in which every single reflection of all that is relates to it. Some will express sentience in a different way than you would recognize. Some will express it in a way that you will recognize. But everything is a product of sentiency. Everything is conscious and uses consciousness in a different way. But you're simply talking about the wave of existence, the vibration itself of unconditional support and love that is the frequency of existence itself and all that is.
Lovely. And back to the idea of resonance.
Yes.
If an individual wants to make contact with a specific being, a specific race, that kind of idea, what is it that they can do to really tune into that resonance in terms of actions they take physically?
Be absolutely passionate about making that connection and dropping every single ounce of insistence about how that connection needs to be experienced simultaneously. And then go about your life taking the actions, whatever you can, whenever you can, that are indicative of having already made that connection.
So, for example, if you want to connect with trees,
yes,
then you would immerse yourself in the physical environment. And then I guess the next part of it is I guess you learn everything you can about that particular tree. Or
if you are passionate about it, you would absorb knowledge like a sponge. You would seek every opportunity to learn more. This is one of the main driving forces of our civilization: curiosity.
And inspiration.
We are insatiable. Insatiable in our curiosity and our inspiration. You have to become insatiable.
Well, thank you for sharing with us the states of being that allow us to resonate with your frequency and have these conversations, as well as all the other opportunities that are actually available to us.
It is our passion and our pleasure to do so. We remind you now that it is important in understanding many of the metaphysical and spiritual concepts you are exploring to allow yourself to dig more deeply, to ponder and think about more deeply the idea of the 5 laws, and allow yourself, whenever possible, to really practice getting to understand them more clearly, more deeply, as we are giving you opportunities to do so now. So enjoy your opportunity and instruction. We thank you, and we will now move forward with this transmission. And during this particular instruction of the 5 laws, again, allow yourself the time, the space, the depth of pondering them and thinking about them and musing on them in childlike ways, in enjoyable ways, but allow yourself to absorb the depth of them, the understanding, the clarity necessary to use them as a framework for any metaphysical experience you may know.
Like someone owes them salvation free of charge, which is total victim mentality. These people give us examples, Jesus and other spiritual teachers who never took money for what they did. They say Jesus fed thousands with fish and never charged them. So, I would like to hear your perspective on this place and how I can answer this kind of provocations. Thank you. Aveo.
First of all, the references that you're talking about, Jesus, Buddha, what have you, these are examples of the potential in every single human being. So this is not necessarily a service that was being provided. It was a teaching example so that others could be encouraged to be like these beings, to do the same kinds of things because you all have those abilities. So, as teaching examples, of course, they are not charging for that. But if they were to provide a service, like I am going to provide you the service of healing, I am going to give you a vibration that allows you to match that frequency so you can heal yourself, and I am training you, teaching you on a different way, on a consistent level of providing the service, of giving you the opportunity to do something that you are either unable or unwilling to do yourself. And I am using my time and my abilities to do this because you are not necessarily willing or able to do it yourself. Then there needs to be a fair exchange for the time and energy spent to give you the ability, or at least teach you how to give yourself the ability to do the same things. That's different than what those other people were doing as simply a one-off teaching example or a showing of what you're capable of. So it is only fair when someone is giving you their time, their energy, to give them something in exchange so that it is an equal exchange. Since you have stated that the only reason you're going to them to get this information or assistance is because you are either believing you are unable or unwilling to do it yourself. You're asking them to provide a service for you, and there must be some form of exchange to allow it to be an equal exchange of energy.
My name is Jinyi, and from California. My question is about recent development on Earth that people are building distributed ledgers and then build collaboration system on top. And another concept is blockchain on Earth.
Yes, all right, we understand blockchain.
Yes, so this technology is based on ledgers, like bookkeeping over the network.
You are saying ledgers, all right, yes.
Yes. And then they are based on different consensus mechanism over the network.
Yes.
Their original design is to provide an open and trustworthy platform for the community. So
yes.
Members of the community can contribute and being served effectively.
All right. Is there a question about this?
Yes. Now, I would like to know, now many of these efforts are reaching their limitation or
yes.
away from their original intention.
Yes.
I would like to know if there are other civilizations also build similar digital trust and collaboration system.
This is a temporary fix. This is a temporary transition between the old systems and a newer system. These things are simply transitional systems that will not ultimately last. New systems will be found that are based on the people themselves, their skills, talents, abilities, by going into a reality that exhibits much more synchronicity or synchronism, that allows everyone to provide what is needed at the perfect timing. And these ideas are only transitional systems to get you used to the idea of letting go of the older systems.
Understand. Next question is, do you have any suggestion on how we can learn more deeply about the sound, vibration, and resonance, and more ways to use them in our life.
We are going to talk about resonance in the next transmission.
Great. That's all my questions. Thank you much.
All right. Thank you very much.
Good day, Bashar. Thank you so much for what you do and also for Daryl.
It is our passion and our pleasure.
Thank you. I've been thinking about time and space in relation to my personality self and my higher self.
Yes.
And if I think about it as a circle with my personality self around the edge of the circle, experiencing my life frame to frame, and then my higher self in the center, being able to perceive any point in that circle, if I add in the thought of alternate lives and parallel lives and alternate realities, I think about it as a sphere where there's an infinite number of edges around that sphere. Would that be a good analogy to understand?
It is a good analogy, a good permission slip that makes sense in your three-dimensional physical reality. Yes, it can work for you.
Good. And is there anything else that I could expand my thinking on with that in terms of perhaps does the sphere always expand or?
Yes. You can think of it as spheres within spheres, or you can think of it as a single sphere expanding. It's up to you to decide what works for you as an analogy. As long as you feel it's taking you in the direction that you prefer, then that's fine. It'll work.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
And also, there seems to have been sound technology in our ancient history with the archaeology that we're finding. Is that something that we'll rediscover and be able to use? And also, do you use sound technology in your civilization? And if so, what for?
Yes, you will be able to rediscover it. We simply refer to the idea now in our technology as resonance.